Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video today. And once again, it is a very unorthodox kind of video. We're back again with the F1 2018 game experiments here today. And in today's experiment, we're asking the question, what happens when we spend 0 R&D points on the research and development, and basically do not develop the car whatsoever with the best car on the grid? So Ferrari are the best car in the game when you start off F1 2018 career mode, and we're going to see what happens when we spend 0. No points at all. We're just going to leave Ferrari as they are, as they come to the Melbourne Grand Prix circuit, the Australian Grand Prix, and see how long it maybe takes to get all the way to the bottom, or see how long it takes for us to get fired, or whatever the case is. You can see there on the top right, we have minus 100,000 R&D points. That is to guarantee that I have categorically no R&D points to spend, even when we earn them, because obviously remember, when you simulate the practice, quali, and race, you still get given R&D points, even if you do really badly and you finish last place in every single session and you don't run any sessions yourself, you still get some R&D points. So to make sure we have literally no points to spend on any R&D, we're at minus figures for the R&D. Think of it like I'm in debt. You know, Ferrari have built up far too many debts. They spent way too much money in last year's car, and we have now debt for this season, and we can't spend any money on the development. So take a good look at this R&D tree, because it's going to be the exact same for the entirety of the video. So take a good look. That is our life. This is our car for the entirety of this video and the entirety of, I don't know, the season or more. We're going to see how long we can survive in Ferrari and see how bad it gets with Ferrari. You never know, it might not turn out bad. That's the whole point of the F1 2018 experiment, is to see how bad it really is going to get. How fast did the midfield upgrade, and how bad can we plummet without any upgrades on the car? So that's what the performance chart looks like at the start. Obviously Ferrari on top, and so let's get the dice rolling and see. Obviously a caveat to this is I'm simulating every single session so we can plow through the entire season. So obviously we know from the experiment video I did with 1 million R&D points, we know the simulated results are a little bit worse than the player can do, but still it shouldn't be too bad, and hopefully we can survive the entire ordeal and not get fired too early before we actually see some good results of Ferrari going down the order. So you can see we've already fast forwarded a little bit to the Bahrain Grand Prix. We come P9. Vettel is still able to get first place then in the simulation, so it's going to be interesting to see when the AI thinks the Ferrari car is not good enough to get a race win. So at the moment Vettel's still winning. You can see the reputation's already going down in the order, so I was already getting a little bit worried at this point if I was going to get fired way before the season ends. But already then, going to the Chinese Grand Prix, Mercedes have upgraded higher than us, so Ferrari are moving down to second place then. Red Bull still in third place, but quite close to us now. But still, at the Chinese Grand Prix, despite Mercedes being the best car on paper, Vettel is able to win that one. I come once again lower down the order, and my reputation decreases even further. So going to the contract negotiations after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix is going to be very intriguing indeed, but you can still see no R&D on that tree, and Mercedes now streak some decent amount ahead now. You can actually see that physically on the chart, that they are a decent amount ahead now by 2 minor upgrades at least, I would say that is, whereas Red Bull still have some decent catching up to do, even to us, before they can even try and catch Mercedes then. But we moved swiftly on to the Spanish Grand Prix then. We did the contract negotiation. We didn't actually get a new contract. We got the same exact contract we started the season off with. You can see the midfield teams are starting to have minor upgrades, but are yet to really make any kind of leeway on catching us, as well as Red Bull as well, and we're still able to win the Spanish Grand Prix with Sebastian Vettel there. I come in P12, but the fact that Vettel's still able to win speaks quite highly of where the car still is, despite Mercedes being at least 2 or 3 minor upgrades ahead. But now my reputation is literally 0. So yeah, I was getting a little bit worried that I was going to get fired pretty much by MONACO in Canada. That was a definite fact of, a worry in my mind. And Red Bull, you can see now, have upgraded into the Monaco Grand Prix, I should say, and they're right behind us now. Literally 1 pixel, and they'll be ahead of us then for second place in the championship in terms of the performance chart there. You can see the midfield still battling with themselves. Renault, Haas, McLaren, Force India, all trying to just get each other, and they're yet to kind of hit those kind of, the real strides they're making. Obviously, once we get to a point in the season where the midfield teams have the kind of core competencies of the quality control and the efficiency control, and they're going into major upgrades and ultimate upgrades, that's when we can finally see the midfield maybe trying to catch Ferrari. Once we get to, I would say, maybe Germany or Hungary, I would say, it was maybe when the AI might get to the major parts of their AI tree. But we go into the Canadian Grand Prix, and to my surprise, Vettel gets first. That's not surprising, but to my surprise, I get P6. So the simulation, for some reason, after making me P9 and P12 for so many races, I get a random P6 in the Canadian Grand Prix, which kind of bumped up my reputation. So that might just save me from getting fired from Ferrari, that P6. But now, going to the next Grand Prix, Red Bull now are finally ahead of Ferrari. So it took 8 rounds of the championship of no R&D points for Red Bull and Mercedes to both overtake the best car on the grid, Ferrari, in the R&D chart. You can see confirmation there. Still no points spent whatsoever. And at the French Grand Prix, despite us now being the third best car on paper, Vettel still won the Grand Prix, and I got 6th place again. So that bumped up my reputation. So at this point, it was a very surprising part of the season. I was very bemused at what was happening. Why on earth are we still getting first, and why am I getting reputation increases? And now you can see the midfield are really starting to ramp up their Haas and Renault getting up the order. Force India with a major upgrade clearly to try and catch back up to Haas there, and so they get ahead of Haas again. So it's Renault, Force India, Haas and McLaren is the running order. Vettel now does not get first place for the first time here. He gets 3rd place at the Austrian Grand Prix. I come home in P10. So now we're starting to see, this is the point in the season, near enough, pretty much halfway, 10th round is where we're starting to see Ferrari's cracks finally showing with the no R&D spent. You can see with the Gulf to the midfield, we still have plenty to go in this experiment to see how this goes then, and also we have a bit of a big question of if we even survive this season so far. At the moment though, getting P14 and Vettel coming P2, reputation goes back down to 0. So although we did have some bumps in reputation there with the Canadian Grand Prix and also France, at the moment now we're back on thin ice maybe about seeing where we're going to be. You can see McLaren make a big stride there with, I would say, 2 major upgrades to try and catch Renault, Haas and Force India, which are pretty much level pegging on the performance chart. Going to the German Grand Prix, then Vettel gets 3rd place, I get P15. So you can see the simulations even saying that the player is going down and down and down as our car gets worse and worse compared to the grid. You can see Mercedes are now streaking quite a bit ahead of not even Red Bull, but ourselves as well, as we just plateau obviously in a straight line. And now you can see some of the midfield plateau a little bit. You can see the bottom 3 are starting to improve as well. Williams, Toro Rosso and Sauber trying to close up somewhat as well, but there's still that gulf to go. So I would say maybe it's going to take another 5-6 races for that gulf to kind of close in the midfield to Ferrari. And now Vettel gets P5 at Hungary and P14 for myself in the simulation there. So signs that finally now, maybe that Ferrari with no R&D points is now really starting to underperform. And now this is the point where I was worried about the contract system here, because we had such a bad run there from Germany to Hungary that I wasn't sure we would get the contract. But to my surprise, I actually undervalue myself at this contract negotiation stage. So I have a successful negotiation because I literally bumped down the position to the lowest I could, got on a hard team goal. I'm a second driver, no contract perks, and yet that's an undervaluation for me, despite me only having about, I think 10 points to my name at this point in the season. So pretty bonkers, but somehow we're still there. We're doing a bit of a Raikkonen, getting contracts we maybe don't deserve, and we're staying in the team despite underperforming there. And so now Renault going to the next round at the Belgium Grand Prix. They make some minor upgrades as well as Haas as well, with Force India, and McLaren stay put. So you can see, very surprising actually, and kind of, I don't know, maybe to be expected because of how close they start off, but Renault, Force India and Haas, they really stick together as a kind of almost 3-pronged attacked unit in the midfield trying to upgrade, and then McLaren kind of lag behind a little bit trying to catch up there. So these 3 teams all gunning to try and overtake and catch Ferrari in the performance chart there clearly. We're going through then to the race for the Belgium Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel now comes in P5 and we come in P12. So you can see Vettel is slowly moving down the kind of pecking order in the race results. So if you forget about myself, because the player always gets a lower simulated result, you can kind of see by Vettel's performances that, he got 5 wins or like 4 wins at the very start, and now he's coming down to P5. So you can see the car is getting slower and slower compared to the entire grid. McLaren then to Italy have a minor upgrade to try and catch up to Renault, Force India and Haas, who plateau a little bit. And to my surprise, at Ferrari's home Grand Prix, Vettel gets P2 and I get P8. So that kind of shows a bit of insight that maybe Ferrari see a bit of a kind of mysterious in the background bump at the Italian Grand Prix. I'm not saying anything, but maybe there's a little bit of kind of script script in the background there of the game that says that Ferrari do better at the Italian Grand Prix, maybe because it's their home race, which kind of makes a little bit of sense there. But now you can see the midfield really get quite close, and at the Singapore Grand Prix, it goes to crap. Myself, I get P17. Vettel, I think, still managed to get P5 or P7, but for the first time, the player really gets shafted there on the simulation there, and I get way down the order. And now, going into the Russian Grand Prix, you can see Haas make a major stride there. I would say that's probably an ultimate upgrade for Haas, or at least two majors, to really get the closest they ever have to Ferrari on the performance chart there. You can see Force India and Renault also still upgrading as well, and McLaren are now catching Renault in the performance chart, and I'm surprised to see how good Toro Rosso, Sauber and Williams are also improving. But then, to say that, at the Russian Grand Prix, Vettel gets a win again, and then I get P17. So this was an actual scientific report and experiment here. I would say this result here, the Russian Grand Prix, is a big anomaly in the entire thing, and we can kind of negate this result. And, you know, if this was like a trend line chart, we'd circle this result, and we'd say we can ignore this one because it doesn't fit the trend line here. Very weird result of first place, and we have completely zero reputation now with Ferrari. So I was thinking the worst, like, could we get fired here after the Russian Grand Prix? And to my surprise, once again, we're given a contract with Ferrari, and we successfully negotiate a new contract. So I don't know how on earth that's happened, but we are literally finessing Ferrari at this point. You know, he comes 17th now, 2 races in a row. Vettel wins the race of the Russian Grand Prix, and yet we're rewarded on the contract. It speaks volumes about Ferrari and the way the game is correctly coded Ferrari, really, because you've got to say, this is something they would do in real life. We have 31 points of the Driver Championship to our name compared to Sebastian Vettel with 230. We're single-handedly moving Ferrari down the pecking order in the Constructors' Championship, and yet we still get a contract. Absolutely insane. Vettel has 200 points more than me, and I get a contract still with this team. Unbelievable, unbelievable. But anyway, even with the R&D reset, obviously I can't do anything with the R&D reset. I don't have any points to even save. I don't even have any R&D to actually save. Like, the reset means nothing for us because we don't have any parts that are going to get reset. If you don't, you know, it's a bit of like, you know, one finger tap to the forehead. You can't get any R&D reset if you don't have any R&D in the first place. So going into then the Japanese Grand Prix, Haas, Renault and Force India and McLaren all have major or ultimate upgrades coming in. You can see literally it's a four-pronged attack and assault of the midfield on Ferrari there. All four going way up there, and Haas now are literally a pixel away from overtaking Ferrari on the performance chart there. You can see Williams also, I don't know if they have a bit of a legacy from the 1 million points challenge, but they have a major upgrade as well, and they streak ahead of Toro Rosso and Sauber there. But this is now the point of the season where the kind of, you know, collar pulling is starting for Ferrari as the midfield now try to overtake us in the next few rounds, I would say. So we move on to the results of the Japanese Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel is now coming in P7, I'm P14 there, so you can see that slow trend of Vettel coming down the order. You know, it's P5, now P7, if we ignore the Russian Grand Prix result. And now going into the USA Grand Prix, Haas's home Grand Prix, quite nicely, they overtake Ferrari and they're up into third place of the performance chart there. You can see Mercedes and Red Bull are streaking away from the entirety of the grid, and it's only a matter of time before, you know, Force India and Renault maybe catch Ferrari here. But Vettel actually surprisingly gets a better result at USA, P5 then, but now Haas plateau a little bit. You can see a lot of the cars actually plateau at this point in the season, I suspect, because I think a lot of the AI now are spending R&D points on the R&D reset and trying to adapt the parts maybe, so that's why they weren't really improving that much. Then going to the Mexican Grand Prix where Vettel gets P7, I get P16 there, and then again going to the Brazilian Grand Prix, you can see Renault and Force India make some improvements. Haas though still plateauing, so they're literally only just a pixel ahead of Ferrari at this point. But even McLaren now have actually caught up there, I should say. McLaren, Renault and Force India, all three of them now trying to overtake Ferrari as we go into the final race of the season. After this one, the Brazilian Grand Prix, Vettel gets P8, I get P15, and then we go to Abu Dhabi, and there we have it. Renault, McLaren and Haas now ahead of us. Force India literally a pixel below Ferrari there, but Ferrari now for the very first time are in the bottom half or slap bang in the middle of the performance chart table. You can see how far Mercedes and Red Bull are of everyone, and you can see Ferrari is right in the middle of that absolute cluster of cars of yellow, orange and grey and pink of Renault, McLaren, Haas and Force India there. And Williams, Sauber and Toro Rosso not too far off actually, to be fair to them. We move on then to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Very surprised, before we get to us, very surprised that Fernando Alonso in this simulation got a win at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which kind of speaks a lot about maybe the AI of Alonso being way too good, but he gets the win there in the simulated Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Vettel gets P8 there, and I get P17, so pretty much a disaster ending to the season, and I thought I was done for. There's no way I keep my contract with Ferrari. I got a grand total of, I think, 31 in the end points, or maybe just a little bit over. I don't think I got more than 40 points over the course of an F1 season, and Vettel got over 200. There is no way in hell I get a contract here for Ferrari. And yet, despite everything, I'm here to tell you I did get a contract for Ferrari. I was able to negotiate a pretty piss-poor contract. You can see how low I go down on the qualifying position and race position, but despite that, I can actually sign myself to a Ferrari, and I thought I needed to do it with no perks, but actually undervalue myself. I could have got some contract perks and I could have re-signed for Ferrari despite that horrendous season I had. I think it's a case of Ferrari see how low their own car is in the performance chart, and so they're kind of like, okay, we can give you a contract, it's fine. But in reality, it's still bonkers that I had that. But then going into Season 2 then, this is the really interesting thing with R&D resets and the all. Let's see where we are. And going into Melbourne then for Season 2, we're going to be officially below every single established midfield team at the very start of Season 1. You can see the pecking order is Red Bull, Mercedes, Renault, McLaren, Haas, Force India. Ourselves in Ferrari, just a little bit below Force India actually, so we're not too far behind. We can see Force India clearly made an upgrade from Abu Dhabi to Australia in the kind of winter period between seasons 1 and 2, and then Williams, Toro Rosso, and Sauber still have some catching up to do, but officially now we're below every single established midfield team when you start season 1. So this kind of first little part of the experiment is done in terms of how low can we go in one season from the best car on the grid. We can go all the way to the 4th worst car on the grid by not upgrading anything, and you can see there, confirmation, still no R&D on the tree, not even the efficiency or the performance, the quality control kind of upgrades to the departments. I've not even spent money on that. And so P14 at the Australian Grand Prix, P20 at last place at the Australian Grand Prix. But Sebastian Vettel goes from winning the first 4 kind of rounds at Season 1 to coming P14 at the very first race of Season 2. So a real big decline for the Ferrari team. You can see I've literally got no reputation for any team. Like, literally at this point, every team hates me. Every team doesn't like me. Every team does not want to sign me. And yet, I'm still here finessing my way in Ferrari with a good contract alongside Sebastian Vettel. We move on then to the Bahrain Grand Prix. As you would imagine, no teams really upgrades. Obviously, they're trying to save R&D points now. I imagine most of the AI teams spent a lot of their money going from Abu Dhabi to the Australian Grand Prix in Season 2, so no one upgrades there, but I suspect probably for the Chinese Grand Prix, we'll see some upgrades there. But you can see, obviously, for the results of the Bahrain Grand Prix, P13 for Vettel. Once again, I come in last place there on the simulation, so it is a very consistent low and down times for Ferrari. And then going to the Chinese Grand Prix, look at this now. Renault with a major upgrade. Force India look to have, I think that might even be an ultimate upgrade for Force India there, or 2 major upgrades to really catch up to Haas and McLaren. But now, we are now getting away, and the gap from Renault to Haas is now the same gap that Force India have to Ferrari now, so we're really slumping down the pecking order then, with Vettel now coming P30 in the Chinese Grand Prix once again, and P20, so you can say now there is utter consistency, and it is a trend now that Ferrari belong here in these results. And then moving into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, then you can see once again little minor upgrade for Haas, but now obviously now that we kind of plateaued, you can really see that gap from Force India to Ferrari then, and Williams are also catching up to us with Toro Rosso there, and Sauber also with a few minor upgrades. Red Bull stay ahead of Mercedes, and the gap from Mercedes to Renault is pretty much the gap that is almost there between Ferrari and Williams. So if we continue at this rate, we will be getting into the kind of bottom 3 teams and really establishing ourselves right at the bottom as backmarker teams. Vettel in P10, myself in P20, so surprised that Vettel actually improved there to get 1 point, and that 1 point might mean quite a fair bit, because getting 1 point compared to 0 that race might be the final nail in the coffin, because we've got 0 reputation for everyone, and you can see very clearly there in the background of this kind of screen, in the background of it, you can see we've got a cutscene there, and it's actually going to be the time we can't finesse any longer at Ferrari.
I told you, if you carried on as you were, and you didn't start putting in the kind of performances the team expected, you were going to lose your drive. Well, it's happened. As of today, you are no longer an employee of this organisation. Lucky for you, one of us is competent. I found you an option elsewhere. and I suggest you take it if you want any hope of salvaging this so-called career of yours.
So there we have it. We have been fired by Scuderia Ferrari. So that's what happens when you spend 0 R&D points in F1 2018 career mode. You will eventually get to a point where your results are so poor that you're going to get fired from the very team you're trying to save. And actually, very surprisingly, you won't guess what team my PR agent got me for my next contract. Yep, it was Mercedes. I got a contract with Mercedes, the second best team on the grid, despite me having 0 points this season and only scoring just under 40 points for the entirety of Season 1. I was 200 or more points off my teammate in Season 1, and despite all of that, I somehow land a contract at the second best team on the grid. I don't know what's gone on. I don't know what on earth Mercedes are smoking. I don't know what my PR agent had to do to get me a contract here at Mercedes. But there you go. But that has been the experiment done for. I've been fired from Ferrari, and that's what happens when you spend 0 R&D points. Obviously, I know the caveat is, technically, I could have avoided being fired maybe if I didn't keep on simulating the sessions. But that's the whole point of these F1 2018 experiment videos. We're meant to be kind of doing a bit of a control test where we let the game do its thing. You know, if I intervene, it's going to contaminate the results. Technically, the player can always try and do better and try, you know that as a fact. Consistently in F1 games, the player can do so much better than the computer can do. The experiments we're doing on this game are all about trying to see what the game can do and how the game reacts to certain scenarios and trying to see what happens when we give it certain parameters. And so in this experiment, we got to round number 4 of Season 2 before getting fired, and we officially became the third worst team on the grid. So to be honest, I'm pretty proud of that. That's a noble achievement, taking from Ferrari from P1 all the way down to P3, the last 3 in the grid. That's a real achievement. It takes a lot of effort to be that horrendous at R&D to take it from first to third last there. So guys, if you did enjoy this F1 2018 experiment video, be sure to smash that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, get subscribed for weekly full-on content. And as always, let me know in the comments below, guys, what other experiments you want to see me do on F1 2018 career mode. But I've been aarava. Hope you enjoyed today, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.